Okay, so we've made adjustments for what we have for our project schedule. We've made tweaks along the way for what we have for the different owners of the tasks, and working from what we have within the contact sheet, we've seen how that can update dynamically different spots within other documentation that we're using within the workspace. Knowing that there are things that will always pop up that we don't anticipate is important for us to have a good way to track those as well. And that's true whether we're talking about something that might happen in the future, typically referred to as a risk, something that actually has happened that's now a problem that needs our attention, typically referred to as an issue, as well as anything that we've assumed is going to go a certain direction that we probably should get validation, consider what we have for an assumption, as well as any decisions that have been made that get us over any of these obstacles that we just mentioned, the decisions that we would track along the way as well. So with those four criteria in mind, a RAID log is perfectly suited for being able to keep tabs of those sorts of things. Risks, assumptions, issues, and decisions all wrapped into one tool. Let's see how we can leverage that from one of the existing templates that we have within our workspace. So coming back to what we have for the dashboard, I'm going to go ahead and click into what we have for the RAID log. At a glance, we can see that this is set up in a very simple spreadsheet style format that we're accustomed to. We have details related to the ID, which is an automated number so that we don't have to keep tabs on those. It's created for us. The title, which should be a short description of what we're working with. The description column itself for a little bit more detail about what we're actually capturing. And then categorizing this as either a risk, an issue, an action, or decision is going to be useful for us as we're keeping tabs on what's what. We have additional columns here for both impact and urgency. Depending on what we designate for the impact, this is something that will now help us bucket it appropriately as we're keeping tabs on what we have on our dashboard, as we have buckets for the high, medium, and low impacts for what we have for our RAID log items. Anything that we have listed for the status, we have a few different options here. Anything that's open, that's self-explanatory. On hold means we've started work on it but had to put it on ice for some reason. Waiting to close means we've basically done everything we need to do, but there might be one last step along the process before we can truly call it done. Then resolved is self-explanatory. We're considering this done. Anything that's discarded is useful because we want to make record of what exactly it is that we think is a problem in the moment. Discarded keeps it as an item within this list, but deprioritizes it in such a way that we're not coming back to it on a regular basis. And then deferred is exceptionally useful as well. It's not uncommon for somebody to bring up something that we think is a great idea, but it's not technically within the scope of what we're trying to accomplish with whatever constraints we have to be able to work with. So capturing items in the moment as what we have for anything that we're going to flag as deferred is very useful for us to be able to say, yes, we made note of this, but no, we're not going to be able to take advantage of this project effort to be able to make good on that ask. The next column for flag for discussion. This is really just a toggleable column here for me to be able to turn on or off any visual indicator so that as I'm working through any of these details, I myself know that I can quickly reference something that I want to make sure I bring up on the next project team call. The active versus inactive field, again, just a simple on or off for what we have for the star. The next two columns for what we have for assignee and baton holder. The assignee is who we're actually looking to get us to resolution for whatever that task or issue or whatever the item is on the RAID log. In some situations, they themselves are not owning the next steps forward, in which case it's very useful for us to be able to define a baton holder. And then like we just mentioned, next steps, always important to be able to define those and identify who exactly is going to be working with that. So that's a quick run through of what we have for the different columns. Let's do one of these entries right quick as an example of how this might work in real time so we can see what that looks like in turn for what we have rolling up to the dashboard. Okay, so now that we've got some entries across the risks, issues, and assumptions, This is where we can start working with these on a regular basis. This is essentially the homework for the project manager to make sure that we're making good on whatever these next steps are. Additionally, to make that easier for them to do, this is going to roll up to the dashboard in such a way that we can keep our eyes on things that need to have our focus. Let's take a look at that next.